Welcome back to English Uncovered. My name is Peter, and I'm so glad you're here today. Every episode of this podcast is designed to help you improve your English step by step, with simple explanations, clear examples, and plenty of practice that you can follow along with, even if you are listening while walking, cooking, or studying. Think of this podcast as your personal English practice partner. I am here to guide you, encourage you, and make sure that you feel more confident using English in your real life. Now, let me explain exactly who this episode is for. If you are an English beginner who can understand some English but still feels nervous when you have to speak, this is for you. If you are preparing for the IELTS speaking test and you want to know how to make a good first impression, this is for you. And if you are simply learning English for everyday life and you want to know how to introduce yourself clearly and naturally, this is also for you. In other words, if you are looking for practical tips to make your English sound more natural and to practice useful phrases that you can use immediately, then you are in the right place. In today's episode, we are going to focus on one of the most important parts of the IELTS speaking test. Part 1, the introduction. During this part of the test, the examiner will ask you very simple questions about yourself. These include questions about your name, your hometown, your home, and your work or your studies. These questions may seem easy, but many students make mistakes here because they overthink, translate in their heads, or try to give answers that are too complicated. Today, we will learn how to answer these questions in a way that is clear, natural, and confident. So here's what you can expect. First, I will guide you through each type of question step by step. Then, I will share useful phrases and examples that you can copy and practice. After that, we will do some guided exercises where you can speak out loud with me. By the end of the episode, you will feel more comfortable introducing yourself and answering those common IELTS Part 1 questions. And even if you are not taking IELTS, don't worry. These are real-life skills that will help you introduce yourself anywhere, whether it's at school, at work, or when meeting new people. Before we dive in, I want to remind you of something very important. This podcast is interactive. That means I want you to participate, not just listen. So when I give you examples, repeat them. When I ask questions, try to answer out loud. The more you practice with me, the more you will improve. And one more thing. If you enjoy this episode and find it useful, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. Tell me where you are from, or tell me what part of English you find most challenging. Your feedback helps me create more content for you, and your support helps this podcast reach more learners all around the world. All right, are you ready? Let's begin our journey into IELTS Speaking Part 1, and let's start with the very first and most common question, what's your name?
Before we start practicing answers, it's important to understand exactly what IELTS Speaking Part 1 looks like and what you can expect on the day of the test. Imagine this. You arrive at the test center a little early. First, you will go through registration, where staff will check your ID and confirm your details. You may need to wait for a short time in a waiting area until your examiner is ready. Then, when it is your turn, you will be invited to enter a small room where the test will take place. The examiner will greet you politely, ask to see your identification, and check your name. Everything is recorded from the very beginning, so remember that the test is official and every word you say will be part of the recording. This can feel a little intimidating at first, but once you know what to expect, it becomes much easier to stay calm. Now, what exactly is Part 1 of the IELTS speaking test? It is the introduction stage, usually lasting about 4 to 5 minutes. During this part, the examiner will ask you simple questions about yourself, your life, and your daily routines. This is not a conversation like you would have with a friend, but it also shouldn't feel robotic. Think of it as a short interview where the examiner needs to hear your English clearly, without long pauses or translation problems. Your goal is not to impress the examiner with difficult vocabulary. Your goal is to show that you can communicate clearly, naturally, and with confidence using simple, correct English. So, what kind of questions can you expect? The examiner will usually start with your name, where you are from, and a few personal questions to help you relax. Then they may ask about your hometown, your home, or your accommodation. You might get questions about your work, your studies, or even your daily activities. Sometimes they ask about your hobbies, your family, or simple topics like food, music, or weather. These are topics that everyone can talk about, so the test is designed to give you a chance to show your English, not to test your knowledge. Remember, the content of your answer is not being judged, but the way you use English is. One of the most important things to remember about Part 1 is the power of first impressions. The examiner is forming an opinion about your confidence, fluency, and clarity from the very first seconds. If you hesitate, translate in your head, or use very complicated words incorrectly, it can create a weak impression. But if you answer simply and naturally, even with basic words, it shows the examiner that you can communicate effectively. For example, saying, "I live in a small city by the sea. It is very beautiful and I like it a lot," is much better than trying to use long, difficult vocabulary that you're not sure about. Simple, correct, and confident always wins over complicated and uncertain. So keep this in mind as we continue. IELTS Speaking Part 1 is short, simple, and very predictable. The examiner wants to see how you introduce yourself and how you handle everyday questions in English. If you prepare the right way, this part can become easy for you, and it can also give you a strong, confident start to the rest of the speaking test.
Let's begin with the very first question you will almost always hear in the IELTS Speaking Part 1. What's your name? This is probably the easiest question of the entire test, but many students still feel nervous and sometimes make mistakes because they try to complicate the answer. Remember, when the examiner asks you for your name, they are not testing your grammar or your vocabulary. They simply want to confirm your identity and make sure the recording is correct. So, the best way to answer this question is to keep it short, clear, and natural. For example, you can say, "My name is Peter," or "I'm Peter." That is enough. You don't need to explain the meaning of your name, you don't need to tell the history of your family, and you don't need to say a long sentence. Just a simple, polite answer is perfect. Sometimes after asking for your name, the examiner might also say, "What can I call you?" or "How should I address you?" This is slightly different from "What's your name?" The first question, "What's your name?" is asking for your full official name. For example, "My name is Maria Santos." But when the examiner asks, "What can I call you?" they are asking which name you prefer to use during the test. For example, maybe your full name is Maria Fernanda Santos Oliveira, but you prefer to be called Maria or even Fernanda. In that case, you can say, "You can call me Maria," or "Just call me Fernanda." This makes the interaction more natural and comfortable. Let's practice some examples together. Imagine the examiner asks, "What's your name?" You can answer, My name is John Smith. Or, I'm Anna. Very simple, very clear. Now imagine the examiner says, "What can I call you?" You can answer, "You can call me John." Or, "Please call me Anna." Notice how these answers are polite but not complicated. That's exactly what the examiner expects. Now it's your turn to practice with me. I will give you some examples and I want you to repeat them after me. Ready? My name is Maria. Good. I'm Carlos. Excellent. You can call me Anna. Perfect. Please call me Daniel. Very good. The goal here is to train your mouth and your voice to say these sentences automatically, without thinking too much. When you repeat them several times, they become natural, and on test day, the words will come out easily. Here's a small exercise for you. Imagine the examiner is asking you right now. I will ask the question, "What's your name?" Now, you answer with your own name. Good. Now, I will ask, "What can I call you?" Again, answer with the name you want to use during the test. Excellent. This kind of small practice might seem too easy, but it helps you feel relaxed and confident when the real test begins. To finish this tip, remember the golden rule. Do not complicate your answers. Keep them short, polite, and natural. My name is Peter. You can call me Peter. That's it. With this simple answer, you start the test in a calm and confident way, and you are ready to move on to the next questions about your hometown, your home, and your studies. Now, let's move on to one of the most common areas of IELTS Speaking Part 1, talking about your hometown. The examiner often begins with questions like, "Tell me about the town where you live," or "What's the most interesting part of your city?" These questions are designed as warm-ups. They are not meant to trick you or test advanced vocabulary. Instead, they help you relax, start speaking, and allow the examiner to hear your voice. Because of this, your answers don't need to be long or complicated. In fact, the best answers are usually short, simple, and clear. Just 2 or 3 sentences are enough. For example, if the examiner asks, "Tell me about the town where you live," you could answer, "I live in Luanda. It's a big city by the sea. There are many beaches and busy streets." That's it. Very short, but correct, natural, and clear. Or if they ask, "What's the most interesting part of your city?" You could say, "The most interesting part is the beaches. I enjoy going there to relax and swim." Again, just 2 or 3 sentences are enough. You don't need to sound like a travel guide or give a full history of your city. The key here is balance. If you try to give long answers with complicated words, you risk making grammar mistakes or sounding unnatural. Imagine you want to impress the examiner and you say, "Luanda is one of the greatest cosmopolitan metropolises of Africa, a vibrant hub of culture and economy with countless attractions." That may sound beautiful in writing, but in a speaking test, it sounds memorized and artificial. The examiner will immediately recognize it, and it will hurt your score. Remember, IELTS is testing your ability to speak naturally in English, not to recite a poem. So my advice is this: keep your answers short, simple, and natural. Think of them as friendly comments, not official speeches. When you answer, try to sound like you were speaking to a friend. I live in Luanda. It's a big city by the sea. My favorite part is the beaches. That's it. Very short, but correct, natural, and clear.
That's friendly, accurate, and it shows you can communicate well in English. Let's do a small exercise together. I'll ask you a question, and I want you to answer out loud, wherever you are. Ready? Tell me about the town where you live. Now give me 2 or 3 sentences. Good. Now another question. What's the most interesting part of your city? Again, give me a short answer, maybe just 2 sentences. Excellent. By practicing in this way, you train your brain to answer quickly and naturally without preparing a big artificial speech. One important warning: avoid memorizing long answers before the test. Some students prepare one perfect description of their city and then repeat it word for word during the exam. The problem is that memorized answers never sound natural. They sound mechanical, and examiners are trained to recognize them immediately. Instead, practice with different short versions of your answer. For example, one time you could say, "I live in Luanda. It's a big city near the ocean." Another time you could say, "I live in Luanda. It's a busy city, and my favorite part is the beaches." By practicing with different variations, you become flexible, and on test day, you will sound more authentic and confident. So remember, keep it short, 2 to 3 sentences, make it natural, avoid memorization, and always answer with confidence. Talking about your hometown is not about showing off big vocabulary. It's about making a good first impression and showing the examiner that you can communicate clearly in English.
Now let's continue with another very common topic in IELTS Speaking Part 1, your home. Almost every student will hear questions about this because it is such a basic and personal subject. The examiner might ask, "Do you live in a house or a flat?" Or, "Who do you live with?" Sometimes they ask, "What's your favorite room in your home?" Or even, "Do you like living there?" These are all simple questions, but many students make the mistake of giving very short answers like, "I live in a house. I like it." That's too short. Instead, you should try to give just a little more detail, still simple, but clear and natural. Let's start with vocabulary. The most common words are house, flat, or apartment. In British English, the word flat is very common, while in American English, people usually say apartment. You might also need words like suburbs, which means an area outside the main city center, or cozy, which means small but comfortable. Other useful words include spacious, decorated, small, big, and modern. You don't need difficult or advanced words. Just 2 or 3 of these will help you give a natural answer. For example, if the examiner asks, "Do you live in a house or a flat?" you can say, "I live in a flat. It's small but cozy." That's a perfect answer. Short, simple, and natural. If they ask, "Who do you live with?" you might say, "I live with my parents and my younger sister." That's already enough. Another question could be, "What's your favorite room?" You might answer, "My favorite room is my bedroom. It's quiet and I can relax there." Finally, if the examiner asks, "Do you like living there?" you could say, "Yes, I like it. It's comfortable and not far from my school." These answers are all 2 to 3 sentences long, which is the ideal length for Part 1.
Let's do a short guided practice. I'll ask you a question, and I want you to answer aloud. Ready? Do you live in a house or a flat? Take a moment and give your answer in 2 short sentences. Good. Next question. Who do you live with? Say your answer clearly. Another question. What's your favorite room in your home? Try to use one of the new words like cozy or spacious. Final question. Do you like living there? Again, give me 2 or 3 sentences. By practicing out loud, you train your mouth and your brain to produce short, natural answers quickly without stress. Now let me give you a quick strategy. Many students worry about this part because they think their home is not special or interesting. But the examiner is not looking for something amazing. You don't need to say you live in a huge modern house with a swimming pool. You just need to describe your real home in simple English. That's enough. If your home is small, just say, it's small, but cozy. If you live in the suburbs, you can say, it's a house in the suburbs. If you share with family, say that. The examiner only wants to see that you can communicate clearly in English. Another important tip: don't try to memorize one big answer and repeat it word for word. Instead, practice with different short versions. For example, one day you can say, I live in a flat. It's small but cozy. Another day, you can say, I live in an apartment. It's not very big, but I like it. By practicing variations, you become flexible and confident. On exam day, you will sound natural, not mechanical. So, remember, when talking about your home, keep it short, keep it natural, use simple vocabulary, and give 2 or 3 sentences. That's all you need to make a good impression in IELTS Speaking Part 1. Now let's move to another very common topic in IELTS Speaking Part 1, work or studies. Almost every student will be asked a question about this because it helps the examiner understand your daily life. The most typical first question is, do you work or are you a student? From there, the examiner can ask follow-up questions like, what do you do every day? Or why did you choose that subject? These questions are not difficult, but many students make the mistake of giving answers that are too short or too long. For example, if you only say, I work in a bank, that's too short. On the other hand, if you give a long list of everything you do every day, it's too much. The best approach is to answer with 2 or 3 clear sentences. Let's look at some examples. If you are working, you can say something like, I work in a bank. I've been working there for 3 years. I prepare reports and help clients. That answer is short, simple, and clear. It shows where you work, how long you have worked there, and what you do. That's enough detail for Part 1. If you are studying, you might say, I study biology. I chose it because I love science. I spend most of my time in the lab and in classes. This answer tells the examiner your subject, your motivation, and a little about your daily routine. Again, 2 or 3 sentences are perfect. Now let's do a short guided practice. I'll say a question, and you give your answer out loud. First question, do you work or are you a student? Answer in 2 sentences. Good. Next question, what do you do every day? If you work, mention 1 or 2 tasks. If you study, mention 1 or 2 activities. Don't make a long list, keep it simple. Finally, why did you choose that subject? If you are working, you can adapt this to, why did you choose that job? Give 1 clear reason. Maybe you can say, because I enjoy working with people, or because I want to help others. Here's the strategy. Remember that IELTS speaking is not about showing everything you know. It's about sounding natural and confident. If you try to list 10 daily tasks or give a very complicated reason, you will probably make mistakes. Instead, give short, clear sentences with easy vocabulary. For example, I study business because I want to start my own company is better than a long, memorized sentence that you can't say smoothly. Another important tip is to personalize your answer. If you just copy a textbook phrase, you will sound artificial. But if you use simple words to describe your real situation, you will sound more confident and believable. For example, if you work as a teacher, don't try to make it sound more complicated. Just say, I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for 2 years. I like working with children. That's simple and natural, and it shows your English clearly. So, when you answer questions about your work or studies, remember, always give 2 or 3 sentences, use simple vocabulary, don't make a long list, and make your answers personal and natural. This way, you will make a good impression in IELTS Speaking Part 1.
Before we finish, I want to share some quick tips and tricks that can really help you feel more confident on the day of your IELTS speaking test. First, always arrive early. If your test is at 10 a.m., try to be there at least 30 minutes before. This way, you are not stressed about being late and you have time to relax. When you arrive, listen to some English before the test. You can play a short podcast, watch a quick video, or even read some English sentences. This will help your brain get into English mode before you walk into the room. Second, keep a positive mindset. Don't say to yourself, "My English is terrible," or "I'm nervous." Instead, tell yourself, "My English is good. I will do my best. I can communicate." A positive thought gives you more confidence and helps you speak better. Remember, IELTS is not looking for perfect English. They want to see if you can communicate clearly. Another small but powerful tip is to smile and show confidence when you enter the room. Smiling helps you relax, and it also makes the examiner feel more comfortable with you. If you sit down looking nervous and worried, it may make you forget what you want to say. But if you smile and greet the examiner politely, you will start with good energy. Finally, be careful to avoid common mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes is memorizing long answers. If you memorize a speech and try to say it, you will sound unnatural, and if you forget one word, you may panic. It is much better to prepare ideas, not full scripts. Another common mistake is trying to use very difficult words that you don't really know. If you don't understand how to use a word, don't use it. Simple and correct English is always better than complicated but wrong English. So remember these tricks. Arrive early, listen to English before the test, stay positive, smile, and avoid memorized or difficult answers. With these small steps, you will enter the exam room feeling more confident and ready to do your best.
Now it's time for our final review and practice together. In this episode, we learned how to answer the most common questions from IELTS Speaking Part 1, including your name, your hometown, your home, and your work or studies. Let's go over each one step by step so that you can feel confident and ready. First, let's start with introductions. The examiner may ask, "What's your name?" or "What can I call you?" Your answer should always be short and clear. For example, "My name is Peter." You can call me Peter. Very simple and natural. Next, let's practice talking about your hometown. A common question is, tell me about the town where you live, or what's the most interesting part of your city? Your answers should be 2 or 3 sentences. For example, I live in Luanda. It's a big city by the sea. My favorite part is the beaches. That's perfect. Clear, short, and natural. Now let's move to your home. The examiner might ask, do you live in a house or a flat? Or, what's your favorite room? You can answer with useful vocabulary like house, flat, apartment, cozy, small, or spacious. For example, I live in a flat with my family. My favorite room is the living room because it's cozy, and we spend time together there. Finally, let's review how to talk about your work or studies. If you work, you can say something like, I work in a bank. I've been working there for 3 years. I prepare reports and help clients. If you are a student, you can say, I study biology. I chose it because I love science. I spend most of my time in the lab and in classes. Always keep your answers 2 or 3 sentences long and avoid making long lists. Now let's do a quick practice session. I will ask you a few questions and you answer them out loud. Ready? Question 1. What's your name? Good. Question 2. Where is your hometown? Question 3. Do you live in a house or a flat? Question 4. Are you a student or do you work? Excellent. Speaking out loud will help you train your mouth and your confidence. For our final mini role play, let's simulate the first 3 minutes of an IELTS speaking test. Imagine you walk into the room, the examiner greets you, checks your ID, and then says, Good morning. Can you tell me your full name, please? You answer clearly. Then the examiner asks, Where are you from? You give 2 or 3 sentences about your hometown. Next, do you live in a house or a flat? You answer naturally. Finally, do you work or are you a student? You give your short explanation. That's it. You just practiced the beginning of the IELTS speaking test. Remember, the goal is not to sound perfect. The goal is to sound natural, confident, and clear. Don't memorize long answers. Don't use words you don't know. Just keep it simple, keep it personal, and keep speaking. And always remember this message. Keep it natural, keep it simple, and keep speaking. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Let's quickly review what we learned together. In this session, we focused on IELTS Speaking Part 1, and we practiced how to introduce yourself clearly and confidently. We covered 4 key areas: saying your name, talking about your hometown, describing your home, and sharing a little about your work or studies. These are the most common questions you will face at the beginning of the IELTS speaking test, and now you know how to answer them in simple, natural English. Before we finish, I want to remind you of something important. The best way to improve is not just to listen, but to speak out loud. Every time you listen to this podcast, take a few minutes to repeat the sentences, answer the practice questions, and imagine yourself in the exam. If you do this regularly, your confidence will grow and speaking English will feel easier and more natural. If you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support helps us reach more learners around the world and bring you more simple, practical English lessons. Tell us in the comments what part of the IELTS speaking test you find most difficult, and we might cover it in a future episode. Thank you so much for listening and spending your time with us today. Remember, you don't need perfect English. You just need clear and confident English. Keep practicing every day and you will improve step by step. Thanks again for being here and see you next time on English Uncovered.